Expanding a business internationally is just so incredibly hard. We always blame the strategy, right? Or maybe bad timing. But what if the real problem, the thing that's really tripping us up, is something we can't even put a number on? Something like culture. Okay, let's get into it. So picture this. Your company, it's just poured millions of dollars into a huge overseas expansion. The strategy looked perfect, a real slam dunk on paper. But then, on the ground, it's a total disaster. Deadlines are flying by, communication is just falling apart, and sales are nowhere. It's a nightmare. And you're sitting there wondering what went wrong. Is our whole plan just flawed? Or is there something else going on? Something deeper, some hidden force that nobody even thought to look for? And believe me, this isn't a new problem. This is something that has kept CEOs up at night for decades. So, for years, researchers have been trying to crack this exact problem. They wanted to take that something deeper, that fuzzy, hard to pin down idea of culture, and turn it into a number. Something solid that you could actually plug into a spreadsheet. And to get a handle on how they did it, we're looking at this huge analysis of the entire field. I'm talking a deep dive into 313 separate academic papers. And this wasn't just a quick look either. This research covered a full 12 years, from 2000 all the way to 2012. So they were really tracking how the thinking on this stuff changed over time. And here's the wild part. After sifting through all of that research, they found that one single idea, one concept, just completely dominated the conversation. It was the go-to explanation for why some global projects succeeded, and others, well, why they failed. And that big idea? It's something called cultural distance. This became the tool, the main metric for pretty much any company trying to figure out how to navigate a new country. But that kind of makes you stop and think, right? I mean, how in the world do you measure something as huge and complicated as an entire country's culture? How do you just boil that all down to a single number? Well, the concept behind cultural distance is basically this. It's a score that's supposed to quantify the difference between your home country's culture and the culture of a foreign country. Think of it like a map. A map can tell you it's, thousands of miles from New York to Tokyo. But it tells you absolutely nothing about the local customs or the language or the unwritten rules of how to do business there. It just gives you one number for a super complex reality. And what's really incredible is just how much this one idea took over. For more than a decade, a whopping 80% of all the research in this area was focused on this one thing, cultural distance. It was like they found this one tool, and suddenly every single cultural problem looked like something that tool could fix. Okay, but this is where the story gets really interesting, because when researchers actually tried to use this super popular tool to predict what would happen in the real world, it just didn't work. In fact, it led to this huge contradiction, something that came to be known as the cultural distance paradox. See, the theory was supposed to be simple. The bigger the cultural gap, the bigger the headaches. Easy, right? But the actual data? It was a mess. The tool everyone was relying on was basically pointing them in two completely opposite directions at the very same time. It really all comes down to this one critical question. Let's say you're a German company and you want to expand into Thailand, a country that scores as being very culturally distant. What's the right play? Do you partner up with a local Thai company, or do you just go it alone and build everything yourself? And this is the paradox. Right here, the research gave good reasons for both strategies. If you partner up, great, you get that local knowledge. But you're also at high risk for clashes because of, you guessed it, cultural differences. If you go it alone, you keep total control and avoid partner drama, but you could end up totally isolated, making huge, costly mistakes because you don't know the local culture. So what's the takeaway? The one big tool everyone was using was giving them completely useless, contradictory advice. No help at all. So, what gives? How could the main tool be so wrong? Well, this led researchers to a pretty shocking conclusion. Maybe the problem wasn't the business strategies at all. Maybe the problem was the tool they were all using to measure culture in the first place. Yep, academics actually started to question their own methods. They realized they were making this one giant flawed assumption, that a country is basically one single culture, that everyone in, say, India is the same. They even gave it a name. The country homogeneity assumption. So let's just break down how flawed this cultural distance idea really was. First off, it treated huge, incredibly diverse countries like China or Brazil as if they were just one thing, one single culture, which is just crazy, right? It also had this massive Western bias, basically judging every other culture against an American or European yardstick. And it may be worst of all, it completely ignored all the amazing diversity that exists inside a single country, all the different languages, regions, and religions. So, where do we go from here? Well, researchers realized they had to throw out the old playbook. They needed a smarter, more sophisticated way to think about culture, something that went way beyond just one simple, misleading number.
And this is what the new game plan looks like. The focus is shifting. Instead of looking at the empty space between countries, the new goal is to look at the incredible diversity within them. It means taking on non-Western viewpoints, focusing on emerging markets, and really trying to understand what makes things tick on a much deeper level. The whole point is to build a much richer, more realistic, and, frankly, more useful picture of how global business and culture actually interact.
So that leaves us with this one big question to chew on. For decades, we were so obsessed with measuring the distance between countries, treating them like these big, solid blocks. But maybe the real secret to global success isn't about looking across the ocean at all. Maybe it's about looking closer and finally seeing the incredible, complex, and vibrant diversity that's been right there inside them all along.